Have you ever stopped to think about why you like tacos, wear jeans, and use a smartphone? The answer is cultural diffusion. Simply put, it's how ideas, products, and practices move from one society to another. Think of it like dropping a single color of food dye into a jar of clear water. The color doesn't stay in one spot. It slowly, beautifully spreads until the whole jar is changed. That's exactly what happens when cultures come into contact. It's the engine that has shaped human history, making our world a giant mix of shared beliefs and borrowed traditions. Before we trace the movement of culture, we need to know what culture is. Culture is basically the entire way of life for a group of people. We break it down into two main types. Material culture is everything you can touch, like the buildings in your city, the tools you use, the clothes you wear, and of course, the food on your plate. Non-material culture is more about ideas and beliefs, things like the language you speak, the laws you follow, your religious beliefs, and even your manners. When we talk about diffusion, it's the movement of both these material objects and non-material ideas across the globe. Every major cultural idea has to start somewhere. That original place is called the cultural hearth. Think of a fireplace. The hearth is where the fire starts and burns the hottest. For example, about 10,000 years ago, farming methods first took root in the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East. That was a major cultural hearth for agriculture. In more modern times, think about your favorite music genre, like hip-hop. Its hearth was the Bronx borough of New York City in the 1970s. The idea starts strong in one place, then it gets ready to spread. One of the most powerful ways for culture to spread is when people literally pack up their lives and move. We call this relocation diffusion because the people themselves are relocating and they bring their culture with them. Imagine a family moving from Italy to the United States. They bring their language, their traditional holiday recipes, and their customs for celebrating special occasions. That cultural trait, maybe a new type of pasta dish, leaves its original home and establishes a brand new little cultural pocket in a new country. It's diffusion through human migration. Long before airplanes and the internet, two forces were responsible for major diffusion: trade and conquest. Merchants traveling along ancient routes like the Silk Road didn't just exchange silk and spices. They exchanged religious ideas, mathematical concepts, and technology. If you were a Roman soldier, you didn't just conquer new land. You also brought the Latin language and Roman laws with you. This can be a form of forced diffusion, where a more powerful culture imposes its ways on a conquered group, often suppressing the native traditions. Another key way culture spreads is through expansion diffusion. Unlike relocation, where the cultural trait physically leaves its starting point, here, the trait spreads outward while still remaining strong at the original hearth. Think of a microphone. The sound starts at the source, but expands and reaches a wider area without leaving the original spot. We can break expansion diffusion down into three specific ways it expands: contagious, hierarchical, and stimulus diffusion. The first type of expansion is contagious diffusion, and the name explains the speed. This is the rapid, widespread diffusion of a characteristic throughout a population, spreading like a common cold. Everyone nearby is infected with the idea, regardless of who they are or how powerful they might be. The best examples today are things that go viral on the internet: a new dance challenge, a funny video, or a political hashtag. It spreads through immediate, personal contact, even if that contact is just through a screen. Now for hierarchical diffusion. Think of a social pyramid or a ladder. This type of diffusion spreads from a place or person of power or influence and filters down to the rest of the population. Fashion is a perfect example. A new clothing trend might start with a celebrity or a high-end designer in a major city like New York or Milan. It's adopted by the wealthy and influential. then moves to smaller markets, and eventually filters down to the general public. It's about ideas jumping from important places or people to less important ones. The third, and perhaps most interesting type of expansion, is stimulus diffusion. This happens when a central, core idea is too complex or unacceptable to be adopted completely. So a new culture adopts the idea but modifies it to fit their local needs or beliefs. A classic example is the fast food chain McDonald's expanding to India. Beef consumption is prohibited in Hinduism, so they couldn't sell the Big Mac. Instead, they adapted the core idea of a fast food burger and created the Makaloo Tikki, a popular potato patty burger, to fit the local culture. The idea of McDonald's spread, but the product changed. To see cultural diffusion in action, we can look back at the ancient Silk Road. This wasn't just one road, but a network of trade routes connecting China and the Mediterranean. Merchants were the agents of diffusion. Chinese silk moved west and Roman glass moved east. But it wasn't just goods. The religion of Buddhism traveled along the Silk Road from India, diffusing into China and Southeast Asia. The Chinese invention of papermaking also spread westward, eventually reaching Europe centuries later and paving the way for the printing press. Trade truly connects the world. One of the most impactful and often tragic examples of cultural diffusion is the Columbian Exchange. Following Christopher Columbus's voyage in 1492, there was a massive transfer of plants, animals, culture, human populations, technology, and sadly, disease between the Americas, the New World, and Europe, Africa, and Asia, the Old World. Without this exchange, there would be no tomatoes in Italian pasta, no horses in the American West, and no potatoes in Ireland. It radically changed the world's diet and geography, both for better and for worse. Sometimes diffusion isn't a friendly exchange. It's imposed through conquest. The Roman Empire is a historical example of this. As they conquered vast territories, they didn't just control the land. They spread their culture. They built roads, introduced the Latin language, the root of Spanish, French, and Italian, established Roman laws, and spread their building techniques across Europe and North Africa. This forced diffusion often replaced or suppressed the languages and traditions of the native groups they dominated. The way we speak is a constant story of cultural diffusion. Every language borrows from others. English, for instance, has borrowed words from French, Spanish, German, and countless others. Think about the common words we use. Karaoke came from Japanese, and taco came from Spanish. When a language becomes an international standard for business or travel, we call it a lingua franca. For centuries, this was Latin. Today, it's English, a direct result of the global diffusion of British and American influence. Religion is a very powerful cultural trait, and it diffuses in different ways. Religions like Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism are known as universalizing religions because they actively seek converts and have spread across multiple continents through missionaries, conquest, and migration. In contrast, religions like Judaism or Hinduism are ethnic religions. They are usually tied to a specific location or ethnic group, making them less likely to spread widely and quickly across the globe. The map of world religions today is a direct result of this historical diffusion. Food is easily the most delicious example of cultural diffusion. Think about your favorite foods. Chances are they're from another culture. Pizza is Italian, but the tomato it uses is from the Americas. Curry is Indian, but is now a national dish in the United Kingdom. Tacos are Mexican, but have been adapted in every corner of the globe. Food items and recipes spread through migration and trade, but as they diffuse, they almost always go through stimulus diffusion, changing ingredients and spices to match local tastes and availability. The newest and fastest mechanism of diffusion is the internet and social media. In the past, it took decades or centuries for a cultural trait to cross an ocean. Now, an idea, a piece of music, or a political movement can spread to millions of people in a matter of seconds. This super-fast spread is a form of contagious diffusion on a global scale. While it connects us instantly, it also contributes to a more uniform global culture, sometimes making it harder for unique, local cultures to stand out. Cultural diffusion is largely a force for good. The exchange of ideas leads to incredible progress. The spread of the concept of zero from India to the Middle East and then to Europe was critical for the development of modern mathematics and science. New foods increase global nutrition, and exposure to different music and art enriches our lives. Fundamentally, diffusion helps us learn about other people, often reducing the fear and conflict that comes from ignorance. However, not all diffusion is positive. One major negative consequence is the loss of local or folk culture. When a dominant culture, like the modern, globalized Western culture, spreads rapidly, it can overwhelm smaller, more traditional cultures. Think of the spread of global chains replacing unique, local businesses. This leads to cultural homogenization, where different places begin to look and feel the same. Historically, this negative effect was most pronounced during colonialism, where empires actively tried to wipe out native cultures and languages. When cultures interact, two things can happen. Acculturation is when a group adopts some cultural traits of another group while still keeping their own unique identity. For example, an immigrant community might learn the new country's language for work, but still speak their native language at home and celebrate their traditional holidays. Assimilation, on the other hand, is when a group completely gives up their original cultural traits and fully adopts the culture of the majority. Cultural diffusion usually leads to some form of acculturation, creating a blended world. So as you go through your day, remember that you are living in a giant, constantly moving web of cultural diffusion. Every time you eat a new dish, use a word from another language, or listen to music from a different country, you are experiencing the powerful force that shapes our world. Look around your community and ask yourself, where did that new custom, restaurant, or clothing style come from? Understanding cultural diffusion helps you understand why your world looks, sounds, and tastes the way it does. It's an ongoing process, and you are a part of it.